wasting less information. Now what happens is you put a bright light on it dynamically, and you're exposing how you like crappily quantize that dark texture. So you actually don't paint darker light textures anymore. You need to paint full bandwidth textures, and you darken or light materials, surfaces at the material level. Don't do it at the texture level. Your DHC compression is going to kill it. So this might sound like it's a bit of an obscure tech wank, but teams have been shut down by this. Need for Speed got hammered. They painted dark cars. They had headlight choke on cars, and then where the headlights hit, it was like purple. It's like, what is this purple stuff? It's because your dark texture, you don't see the purples when it's really dark and low. As soon as you blow it up with dynamic lighting, it shows up. So you're just wasting information. So we've actually had our guys on our team paint all of our textures full histogram. They don't paint dark textures or light textures. Spread it out, use all that space. So here's an example. The sphere on the left, it's got a full histogram, throw a light on it, it's pretty. The sphere on the right had a dark texture that had, that histogram on it. And then we cranked up the light to make it brighter, which is, that could occur. You could go under a street light or something. And look at the color artifacts. This is actually not a bad case. It can get a lot worse than that. See that banding? That's what happens when you make textures that way. So be really careful. Yeah, so when we were EA, it was actually just hammered us. And we had to, I wasn't on the team, but it sent shockwaves through. They had to go back and revisit all the textures. And that was painful. They didn't account for it. It was a bad deal. I wasn't going to get into hybrid environment, but I can't. Sorry, guys. Moving on. Adaptive luminance. So, what... adaptive luminance exposure. You see lots of games. Things go lighter, darker. Why not adjust where you sample for your adaptive luminance? So right now we're exposing this video camera light meter in that center image. Well, that's cool. Well, what can we do with this? Well, if you're using a screen-based compositional system for your cameras, you can have your adaptive luminance target be in the same place as what you're using to compose your camera. So you can just be like a film view. You can say, I want to compose the character, move him to the right, and I want to expose for him. And so instead of just doing like a full screen adaptive luminance filter, you can actually make that be constrained to your camera system. There's some really cool stuff in there. Framerate's another huge one. Different games need different things. Like, some games are 60 hertz, some are 30. It's your call, but have a plan for it. Don't say, well, we're going to shoot for 60, and if we don't make it, we'll go 30. Because that just doesn't work. So here's 60 hertz traditional scheme. You got an input, you zoom, you draw. This is pretty standard. You got a 2-frame latency. So here's a 30 hertz traditional. You can fill it up. This is pretty common. This is the 4 frames latency. Well, a lot of times you might be GPU bound. So here's a solution. You got to think about this stuff, and you actually have to plan it out and say, okay, we want 30 hertz. We're going to do motion blur. We're going to depth of field. We're going to pour all that stuff on. And you need to have a plan for this because if stuff goes wrong, what are you going to do? If you go to 60 and drop back to 30, well, then you should have been using that power to actually go to 30 because you can do so much more if you decide to go 30 hertz. Here's CPU bound. Here's an interesting one. This is a 2-frame latency 30 hertz one, and there's different ways to do it. But what I want to impart here is you can be kind of sneaky how you draw your frame. You can choose to draw your environment first, and then still wait for a controller update, and then draw your character on top of that, so your game has improved latency. Because your environment's not going to change probably, but your character might. So you can decouple drawing your character in your environment, and you can update your character a little more quickly. You can listen to a new input that's coming in. So there's an idea to think about. This is cool. Shoot your own reference. So if you guys have a digital SLR, you can shoot RAW format, and it's like 14-bit or 16-bit. It's actually really cool. So this is something Kirk and I do. Oh, there's more reference to the game. You might be working on a unicorn game, and you might have a meadow that you need. This is our program of choice. It's Adobe Lightroom. You can do some Photoshop too. But this is a shot taken with a Canon D30. If I find my mouse, over. There it is. Check this out. This is an HDR shot of your camera. So we can just crank the exposure down, get that. We can rip the texture off at that level. Okay, we want some more detail in the shadows. So this is huge bandwidth just from a digital camera shooting RAW format. Kirk goes crazy with this stuff, and then we'll put some color in and tint. And because it's not JPEG, it's actually a raw image. You can do really a lot of really non-destructive stuff, like what would it look like if I shot it in fluorescent light? Interesting. So, just don't get shots off the web. That's obviously great, but if you have a digital camera and it shoots RAW, and you have Photoshop, or I recommend Lightroom, it's really badass. You can do some really cool texture tweaking with it. So here's a little tip. We went to San Francisco and New York, and we shot all in reference. And you know, some of it was at nighttime, and lights are blowing out. If you just did a shot with a digital camera, that's gone, that's it. But with this, you can actually pull the lights down, and you can salvage a lot more information from it. So this is a huge one. It's not a technical tip. It's an interpersonal tip. Take your programmers out to lunch, artists, and I mean that. And I know they might be awkward looking. They're sort of nerdy. Not you, Tony. You're cool. They do weird things. They get strange tattoos. But it's you can't do it alone. And like art's so crazy. Next gen hardware is so complicated. And there's so much stuff going on. You got to work with these guys, and it's really critical they respect you. And you know, don't ask for stupid things because they're smart and they'll say that that's a stupid thing. And then next time you ask for something, they're going to look at you and cock an eyebrow. And I really suggest that if you're working on something and you know you're expecting something out, you do a ton of renders for it, and you give them like really clear instruction, and you tell them what it is and what it isn't. Because once they know the domain for it, it won't be scary to them. You know, I think it's Tony. Tell me if I'm wrong, but when an artist walks up and says, "Hey, we got an idea for something," and you turn aside, they're like, "Oh no, it's going to be this like stupid thing and all complicated." So, you know, do reference and boil it down to it's individual components and just be really clear with them. Because at the end of the day, like, they make you look good. And in doing so, you make them look good. And it's that relationship that's really important. So, you know, you got to work with them. And it is so important. Like, really clear instructions and work with them on their ideas. So here's just a little tip from Mocap. If you guys do Mocap, Mocap's wonderful and horrible. It's really good and it can be really terrible at the same time. So I would suggest you obsessively plan your Mocap shoots. You can't go on the floor and think about anything. You need to have it all broken down. And something that we figured out, not for this game but for previous ones, is never tell the talent the moves that you want to get from them because they'll just like think about it too much when it happens. So say everything is a 3-move sequence. We want to run to a this, to a that, and then they'll go okay. But really, you just want them to move in the middle. Don't tell me what to move in the middle. So everything's a 3-thing sequence. So by the time they get to move in the middle, it's natural, and they have a natural out for it. So think of it as like little 3 things. So you might get a good start middle from that capture, but you will get a better middle if you do the 3-way thing. So I'm passionate about cameras, and I think video game cameras have got a really long way to go. They're sort of neglected. You see them now starting to get the attention they deserve. But with cameras, I've showed the slide before, you have to know what you're doing, especially with the effects. So what is this? Is this a crazy model? Did some freak obsessively build this? What's going on here? Now this is really interesting. Humans, I want to know if it's civilized humans. If we go to an African tribesman, if they would know. We have an understanding inherently of what lenses can do. Like psychologically, subconsciously, we know what lenses can do. And if you mess with depth of field in the wrong way, you play with the viewer's perception of scale. So these are photos. All that's been done is I'll get to him in a second. All that's happened is we play with the depth of field incorrectly. And what happens with that is you get this false sense of miniaturization. So we can now do depth of field in games, which is great. But if you get too crazy on controls, you miniaturize it. And I think it's interesting, like, how do humans know that that's what happens? But that's what happens. So don't let your designers do cameras unless they know cameras. Sorry, designers. Okay, so here's the guy. He's cool. What's common between all of these shots? These guys are heroes. Why are they heroes? Why do we feel that these are powerful people? There's a thread through all these shots. That's actually going to be a good point. That's potential. All these shots, I'll go actually really quick in time. All these shots have got at least one thing in common, and that's they were all taken with a mid-telephoto lens, and the camera was underneath the eye line. And that's how, just in cinematography rules, you can make something feel powerful. So it's really simple once you know the trick. So here's 3 lenses: Hasselblad, Canon 135 is your famous.